Baby, be in love with your fantasies. I can be a star, make a sky so bright. Welcome to my dungeon, this is ecstasy. Let me play the fantasy.
What's good, YouTube? It's your girl, Asia.
And it's your boy, BJ, and we back like we never left. Shout out to the family. We appreciate you guys for tuning back in. Most importantly, thank you guys for taking the time out of y'all day to rock with us. Now, you guys see that title. We're about to be checking out the secret Trump investigation that nobody is talking about. This is my first time ever hearing about it.
Me too.
So I got to give a big shout out to one of our loyal supporters that suggested this video. And you ready to get into it?
Yeah, this video comes from Johnny Harris, you guys. So if y'all want to check it out, I'll make sure we leave the link down in the description if you want to check out the videos he has over there. Awesome content, y'all. So, but yeah, this is my first time hearing about this, and I don't know. I guess maybe we're a little too late if it's something bad, but we're going to find out. Okay.
All right. So, yeah, the secret Trump investigation that nobody's talking about. Let's get into it. Let's go.
2017. In 5 days, Donald Trump will be sworn in as President of the United States. Thousands of miles away in Cairo, Egypt, at this bank, 11 kilometers from the international airport, a bank manager receives a handwritten note from someone who holds an account at the bank. The note asks him to, quote, kindly withdraw a sum of $9,998,000 US.
$9 million.
This was unusual. But according to bank records, bank employees did what they were told, heading to a vault full of US dollars and assembling stacks of $100 bills into 2 large bags. It all weighed about 200 pounds and comprised a large part of all of the US dollars that were in Egypt at the time, now sitting in bags in the manager's office. Until later that day, when 4 men showed up. They verified that they were associated with the account, and they took the money, put it into a truck, and left.
Where they headed to?
The bank account where that $10 million was taken out of belonged to a shadowy organization called the Research and Studies Center. It was an Egyptian entity, but it's an entity that US intelligence believes is a front for the General Intelligence Services of Egypt, basically Egypt's international spy agency, the Egyptian CIA, let's say. So the Egyptian CIA takes out $10 million, and from here, the trail goes cold. Because shortly after this transfer of $10 million, the account is closed. And that entity, the Research and Studies Center who owned the account, apparently doesn't exist anymore.
What?
Wow. Just like that.
Why did the Egyptian CIA need $10 million in cash? Who were these men who collected it? What were they doing? And what?
Is that not weird? For somebody to take that much money out and then close the account?
And then close the account, and then all of a sudden,
then the
agency just disappears.
It doesn't even exist anymore.
Well, he said the shadowy company.
Right.
You know?
That's weird to me. Okay.
If anything, does this $10 million have to do with former President Donald Trump? This is a really important set of questions. One that the FBI and federal lawyers have been secretly investigating to try to answer for years. Because they strongly suspected that this $10 million made its way into the hands of the Trump campaign, a foreign country trying to buy the election, and in exchange, buying loyalty from the new president. And they suspected that Trump may have known about this and accepted this bribe. And if he did, that would be a violation of federal law. I want to tell you the story of this investigation and how it was suddenly shut down by Department of Justice officials who were appointed by Donald Trump. This recently released Washington Post investigation reveals that there was much, much more going on that we didn't know about until just now. So I'm going to try to visualize this story, show it to you in the clearest way possible. Now listen, I know that this is a very politically sensitive topic. There's an election coming up. We all are taking our sides. I commit to you that I'm going to stick to rock solid facts here. I'm going to lay them out the best I can.
Please.
And show you the evidence that clearly demonstrates how we know these facts. Whenever I'm making circumstantial connections or my own analysis, I will try to make that very clear. Ultimately, I want to lay this all out and let you make a decision as to whether you think there was wrongdoing here, whether you think something needs to be changed or someone needs to be held accountable. As always, every assertion in this video is fact-checked and linked in my sources by timecode. You can always check that out, scrutinize it, leave comments if you have issues with it. And with that, let's dive in.
Today I wrote another check for $10 million. I'm spending money like crazy.
President no way.
has been somebody that's been very close to me from the first time I met him. I met during the campaign where I could stand in the middle of Fifth Avenue and shoot somebody and I wouldn't lose any voters, okay?
Hey, before we go on, I want to explain something about our methodology of reporting on stories like this. Going deep on stories takes weeks, like sometimes 6 or 8 or 10 weeks to really understand these stories. And a tool we've been using more and more is Ground News, who is the sponsor of today's video. Ground News is a single article. They'll show you this story. All right, hold on a sec. I have been using this elementary school penmanship practice paper for about 10 years as my note-taking platform. And I don't know why, but I love it. Okay, to keep things totally rock solid, crystal clear, I'm gonna make a list. I'm gonna call this list What We Know. And in this box, on this list, I am going to put the things that we truly know, that are rock solid facts, to keep us crystal clear. Number 1, we know that Egypt wanted to give money to Donald Trump's campaign. They planned on it. They approved it. How do we know that? The CIA. Johnny Harris talking about the CIA again. Here we go. The CIA spies on everyone. We know that. We know they spy on foreign countries and foreign leaders. And during the 2016 presidential campaign, we know that they had a confidential informant within the Egyptian government. This was a reliable informant who had given the CIA reliable information in the past. They trusted this person. Between this informant and, quote, other operations, the CIA learned that, quote, Egyptian leaders, including President Abdel Fattah al-Sisi, had signed off on sending $10 million to Mr. Trump's cash-strapped campaign. They say this happened just before the 2016 election. Okay, let's go back to our list here and make this more specific. The CIA...
Well, if they're sending it for the campaign and it's right before the election, the campaign was already over. Right?
No, this is prior to the campaign. At the beginning of the campaign.
Okay.
Yeah, 2016.
Okay.
Election. Okay, let's go back to our list here and make this more specific. The CIA is actually saying that they know that the president of Egypt, El-Sisi, actually signed off on giving Donald Trump $10 million, specifically $10 million. We were never supposed to learn about this intel, by the way. This was totally classified, part of a secret investigation. And in my mind, this intel is quite reliable. It comes from multiple sources. It comes from a reliable informant. And the CIA used it as a way to pass along to the Department of Justice their concern that there may have been some foreign interference from Egypt. And with that, let's get back to this guy, Abdel Fattah el-Sisi, the president of Egypt. He's a military man who rose to power in 2014 after kicking out Egypt's first democratically elected president, who, by the way, was horribly unpopular, and the people also kind of wanted to kick him out. But yeah, he rose to power in a coup and then just held on to power. And, predictably, once he consolidated power, he started silencing the press, squashing political dissent or political opponents, locking people up, arresting journalists and activists, etc., etc.
Wow.
Same old story.
I remember that.
But his record was so bad that during the Obama administration, the US cut Egypt off of billions of dollars of military aid that we usually send them. We cut it off to basically punish El-Sisi for all of these horrible human rights abuses. So Egypt gets cut off from all this vital military aid, but not for long.
Uh-oh. I'm starting to see where this is going.
Okay, here's the second thing we know. Trump and El-Sisi met up in New York during the campaign, like when he was still a candidate. Okay. It was September 2016, a few weeks before the election. They're at the UN headquarters, and they have this closed-door meeting. And according to the Trump campaign, Trump was very warm to LCC. Now remember, the US was keeping Egypt at arm's length because of all these human rights abuses, so that was the MO for diplomats. Trump totally breaks from all of that in true Trump fashion, says that he loves LCC, he's gonna invite him to the White House. The campaign says that the U.S. will be, quote, a loyal friend to Egypt. Here he is on Fox News right after the meeting.
He's a fantastic guy, took control of Egypt, and I thought it was a great meeting. We met for a long time, actually. We had a long meeting.
So that's the other thing we know. That's why it's on this list. Trump loves El-Sisi. They have a good chemistry. Trump wants to help Egypt. So it's actually not surprising that Egypt wants to help Trump win. This would be very good for El-Sisi, which explains point number 1 here. El-Sisi signed off on this plan to give $10 million to Trump, according to good CIA intelligence, because he wanted him to win. It would benefit him and his regime if Trump won.
He wanted to work with somebody
Now,
like
a little
that?
context here. Presidential campaigns are really messy and hard in the last few weeks. Campaigns kind of have to spend millions and millions of dollars in the last 2 weeks leading up to the election to blitz on advertising, on travel, on get out the vote campaigns. But the Trump campaign found itself in a tricky situation in the weeks leading up to the 2016 election. They didn't have the money to do this. They were running out. So what did the campaign do? They asked Trump himself for money.
Can you even do that? Now we know Trump, prior to him even running, he was a billionaire, very successful in business.
Yeah, he could do that. I mean, why couldn't he do it? If I want to support my own campaign with my own money, if I got it.
With your own personal funds?
Obviously, it's going to take a lot of money, so you wouldn't want to use your own money. But, I mean, it depends on how bad you want it, I guess.
The campaign do? They asked Trump himself for money. This post-investigation reveals that they pleaded with Trump to write a check to his campaign for a final blitz of television ads. And the response was no. Trump repeatedly declined. He didn't want to give any more of his own money to this campaign. That is until October 28th, 2016. It's 5 weeks after Trump and El-Sisi met in New York, and Trump suddenly changes his mind and announces that he's going to write a check to his campaign for this final blitz. And how much is he going to give? $10 million.
Today I wrote another check for $10 million. I'm spending money like crazy.
Now, one small thing here.
Man.
Trump advisors told the FBI that while this $10 million looked like a contribution, like a donation from Trump to his campaign, they actually structured it as a loan. $10 million that could be paid back to Trump. Okay, so we know.
That's the only reason why I was asking that question, can you use your own money? Because I know they're going to be looking and fact checking, trying to make sure that money legit, where it came from, the source of it, things of that nature.
Yeah, but can you take out a loan on your own campaign like that? I feel like that's...
Shoot, that's where he at right now.
Okay.
Taking a loan out.
That President El-Sisi signed off on giving Trump's campaign $10 million. Why? Because Trump and El-Sisi are friends, and a Trump presidency would benefit El-Sisi and his regime greatly. We also know that Trump, who refused to give money to his campaign in the final weeks leading up to the election, suddenly changed his mind and wrote a check for $10 million to his campaign, which was a loan to be paid back. Okay? I'm going to add that to the list.
A loan.
Does this all feel solid to everyone? These are rock solid facts in my mind. And now let's just add the point that we talked about at the very beginning, that 5 days before Trump was inaugurated, $10 million of cash, $9,998,000, $2,000 away from $10 million, was loaded up in 2 bags in cash and carted away, taken out of a bank account that is associated with El-Sisi's intelligence agency. I'm gonna add this to the list. So looking at these 4 items, doesn't it kind of feel obvious? Doesn't your brain want to connect the dots and paint a picture that it feels very clear in my brain? President El-Sisi, who we know wants to give $10 million to his new friend Donald Trump, orders $10 million to be taken out of a bank and secretly transferred to Trump's campaign. And Trump, knowing this, suddenly feels comfortable loaning his campaign exactly $10 million, knowing that he'd be repaid from this money from Egypt. Doesn't it all lined up? Case closed, we can just convict somebody? No. That's not how it works. That's not how the burden of proof works. It's not how our justice system works. This list, while full of robust facts, still doesn't paint a picture of any wrongdoing.
So he's saying, like, for a fact that Egypt's leader gave them this $10 million.
No, not necessarily.
They don't know for sure.
Right. No.
But it was a big coincidence. But I guess he did. It was almost like he paid it forward then. He took the $10 million and used it for himself only to get it paid back by this supposed $10 million that came from Egypt.
Yeah.
That's the story he's putting together.
That's what he's saying.
Okay.
And so far, like I said, as far as this investigation, him talking about this is the investigation that nobody's talking about. Again, like I said, I've never heard of any of this.
Okay, but okay. At the end of the day, I don't know we don't know 1,000% that money was given to Trump.
Right.
It is weird that this man pulled up though. They had this real long meeting. I'm just saying.
It is in the realm of circumstantial evidence. $10 million over here, $10 million over here, they must connect. But investigators never found the connection. They never found the $10 million flowing in to Trump's bank account. And therefore, this is circumstantial evidence and not rock solid, provable
Okay, that's what I
anything.
just said.
But luckily, when we have this, that's what investigations are for. Soon after Trump takes office, the Department of Justice launches an investigation. Because remember, this is when the CIA told them that, quote, El-Sisi signed off on giving Trump $10 million. This was concerning intel, and it was happening at a time, if you remember, that there was a lot of concern about foreign interference in American democracy. A lot of that focused on Russia. That was public, that was a big thing. We all talked about Russia, foreign interference. But at the same time, there was this investigation happening into whether Egypt helped buy the 2016 election. It was all happening quietly in the background because it was pretty sensitive. We're talking about potential bribery of a sitting president. So the FBI and investigators are looking into this, trying to find evidence of potential wrongdoing. Meanwhile, President Trump takes office and starts to do exactly what he kind of promised he would do when it came to Egypt. He invites El-Sisi as one of the first guests to the White House. He calls him, and this is a direct quote from someone who was in the room at the G7 summit in France, quote, "My favorite dictator." God, Trump. Boy, my favorite dictator. And then, remember how Egypt had been cut off by the Obama administration of like $1.4 billion of military aid? Trump unfreezes that money, and it starts to flow to El-Sisi.
That's what I was waiting on. This was what I was waiting on. For him to come out and say this, because obviously a lot of that had to do with the military aid that Obama cut off. Right. So I was waiting for him to come back around to this.
Yeah. Okay.
I was waiting for him to come back around to this.
It almost sounds like a favor for a favor.
Hey, one hand washes the other.
Right. I help you, you help me.
For anything in return, just give El-Sisi the money. And this was against the advice of his first Secretary of State. He said, like, this is not a good idea. And Trump's like, yes, it is. $1.4 billion to Egypt. Now listen, if, big word, if, put if on the screen, if El-Sisi had bribed Trump with $10 million to help get him elected, then his investment is paying off. He is benefiting a ton from a Trump presidency. Now, we don't know if he did. We don't have any direct evidence that he did. But if he did, pretty good investment. So while this is all happening, the FBI and federal investigators continue to try to find a link. $10 million leaving Egypt, did it ever enter Donald Trump's bank account somehow? To find this out, they took the investigatory step of requesting Donald Trump's personal bank records.
Okay.
They were going to look at them to find large transactions to see if $10 million showed up sometime before the election. So let's get a calendar out here. The FBI requested records spanning May to November 2016, the months leading up to the election. But guess what? They didn't find anything. They found no suspicious deposits from foreign entities of $10 million. So then they decided to go look at the Egyptian bank and get their records. And they fought in this massive battle that is wild and it's detailed in the Post's investigation because the Egyptian bank didn't want to give over their records. They're like, no, we're not going to give over our records because that would, quote, wreak havoc on American foreign policy, possibly alienating U.S. allies, undermining diplomatic efforts, and inviting reciprocal treatment.
Oh, wait.
geez, what's in these records, Egyptian bank?
Right.
Like, what is in these records that's going to topple American foreign policy? So this epic court battle goes down. There's like a secret investigation and court thing happening in D.C. It goes all the way to the Supreme Court. And finally, the Egyptian bank has to surrender the records. And this is how we learn about the big transfer in US dollars that happened from the Egyptian bank in cash. They didn't know about this before. But the investigators noticed something weird about all of these records that they got from the Egyptian bank, which is that other than that tiny handwritten note that said, put $10 million in 2 bags and 4 guys are gonna come pick it up, they felt like something was missing. And I'm gonna quote directly from the Post here, just so clear. They found that the bank, quote, had not turned over a single email of that enormous same-day transaction, the $10 million of cash, and that the lack of any internal communication on such a huge sum of money, same-day transaction, was unthinkable.
That's
the
true.
U.S. prosecutor who was heading this case continues with, it strains credulity that the bank kept such a stockpile of U.S. dollars on hand, let alone that it was able to be gathered up in less than 24 hours.
Okay.
You know, a lot of times they don't allow you to get that much money, but
in one day.
Depend on if you a who of who's.
Well, sometimes they don't
you got
even
a
have
name.
that much money to gather up to give, like at one.
In one location.
Yeah, but wouldn't you think like
Maybe
if
this
somebody was
particular
like,
bank probably would have that type of cash.
hey, somebody's coming to get $9 million today. Make sure you have it ready to go. And X, Y, and Z needs to make sure that they're here and there, and they do this and they take these steps, and we need to do these things. And there was no email, no communication whatsoever.
Yeah, it's almost like somebody just got up that day, walked to the bank and said, I need $9 million.
With the handwritten note. Okay.
Translation? The bank probably didn't give over all their records. Like, really, there was no other like emails being like, hey, there's going to be a $10 million transaction from this bank branch near the airport. So they're probably missing some records, but they did get that handwritten note that talked about the $10 million transfer in cash.
They got
5
that.
days before the inauguration. January 15th. Let's get back to the calendar.
So they
now
kept the
remember,
note.
the FBI had access to Trump's bank records from May to November 2016. So if the $10 million was going to the Trump campaign, the FBI wouldn't see it because they only had Trump's records up to November 2016. Okay, well that's easy, says the FBI. Now that we have new information about this $10 million transfer from Egypt, let's just get a wider set of records from Trump's bank.
Uh-oh.
Something after January 15th so that we can see if some $10 million deposit shows up there.
Uh-oh.
This is like standard investigatory procedure. One FBI agent told the Post that if this were any other investigation, they would have a justification to get these records, quote, in a heartbeat. But because this wasn't any other investigation, this was investigating the finances of a sitting president, they would have to ask their boss for permission. And who is their boss?
Who else?
This guy. Bill Barr. And here's where the investigation starts to deteriorate, unfortunately.
Oh, they just brought him up earlier.
Bill Barr was appointed by Donald Trump to be the Attorney General. That's the head of the Department of Justice, the top law enforcer of America. Bill Barr can reasonably be considered a Trump ally. You may disagree with me on this, and if you do, please say so in the comments. I'd love to hear your rebuttal to what I'm about to say. His job is to keep the president legal and honest, and yet what he showed during his tenure is that he would often side with Trump. He would undermine investigations against him, and he even stoked fears of voter fraud in 2020 without real evidence, though he did eventually come out and affirm that the 2020 election was not stolen because there's no evidence that it was. But yeah, the guy's a Trump ally. And the big question is, why does the president get to appoint the person who is supposed to keep him legal and honest?
Right.
Well, the American system is not perfect, and there's also other special sort of controls on
Every
how we keep the
time.
president honest, even if this guy's biased and politically motivated. And anyway, I'm not going to go into that. It's a story for another day. The point is, Bill Barr, we can say is a Trump ally, and he is the boss of all these people who are investigating the Trump-Egypt connection. So he hears about this investigation. He hears that the agents want to expand the amount of bank records that they can get on Trump so that they can see if there was a $10 million deposit after the cash left Egypt. And he doesn't like it. He doesn't like it one bit. He goes to the FBI director and he says, hey, you need to, quote, impose adult supervision on these agents who are, quote, hell-bent on getting a wider range of Trump's records. Adult supervision. Yikes. That doesn't sound good.
That sounds like an overseer. You need to get adult supervision.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it's almost like a conflict of interest.
Every time, like every time. That's why
if I'm electing or bringing in a general attorney or attorney general, an attorney general, and I get to choose him.
Right.
I just feel like sometimes that can be a conflict of interest. I'm not saying in this case, but I'm just saying potentially that could be a conflict of interest.
Yes. Okay.
Barr starts voicing doubt about the actual agents who are working on this investigation and starts to question whether or not there's even enough evidence to continue the investigation. Now, a note about the agents. If Bill Barr is politically appointed and potentially marred by political bias, the investigators in this case often are not. They're career employees of the department. They are there because they are good at their job. They have shown that they're committed to the values of justice in America. They've not risen because they have garnered favor with some political person, at least not as much as political appointees. Politics is in everything. It's impossible to escape it. But these career investigators have different incentives. And these career investigators felt strongly that this investigation needed to continue, that they had evidence, that the next logical step was to get a wider range of Trump's records so they could see if this $10 million shows up. And they are met with more and more resistance by Barr and other Trump-appointed leaders within the Department of Justice. This drama, this tension, which was all happening in secret, is now thoroughly documented in this Washington Post investigation. I recommend that you read it because the Post interviewed like dozens of these people who were in the room, and it paints a picture that is very clear. The political appointees didn't want this to happen. It all comes to an end when Barr kind of suddenly replaces the prosecutor who was working on this case with someone who was more aligned with him. And he almost immediately pumps the brakes on this investigation. He halts it. A few months later, Barr replaces that person with a new prosecutor who then sends out an email with the subject line, Egypt investigation. The Post looked at this email, verified it, and it states that, quote, based on review of this investigation, we would be, quote, closing the above matter with no conviction or indictment. So it was over. That was it.
Done.
Whether or not that $10 million from Cairo ended up in Trump's world, and whether or not Trump knew that that $10 million was coming, and therefore he gave $10 million to his campaign, knowing he would get paid back, whether Trump's actions as president, actions that greatly benefited Egypt, were the result of this money influencing his decisions, we will probably never know any of this. And in the eyes of the career prosecutors working on this, because the mechanism through which we know things, investigation, was shut down too early and through politically motivated bias. Now that's my read. I'm going to make it very clear that's my read on this. You should read the accounts of these prosecutors who felt like it was shut down too early. My read, my connection is that it was done by a Trump ally for politically motivated reasons.
Okay,
so all we're left with is this. A list of some rock-solid facts that look pretty fishy, but nonetheless are not rock-solid evidence of wrongdoing. In 2021, a new administration came into the White House. They could have reopened this investigation and seen it through properly. And yet the new Attorney General wasn't briefed on this until a year later. But by then, it had been more than 5 years since those 2 bags of cash were filled with $10 million in Cairo, meaning this thing called the statute of limitations had expired. It was too late. They couldn't actually prosecute this. The Post reached out to the Trump campaign, and in reply, they said, quote, the Washington Post is consistently played for suckers by deep state Trump haters and bad faith actors peddling hoaxes and shams.
See.
Okay. And then, just recently, in September 2023, New Jersey Democratic Senator Bob Menendez was charged in a case that alleges that he used his political influence to benefit Egypt in exchange for cash, gold bars, and other luxury items.
He accepted these gifts from businessmen acting on behalf of the Egyptian government.
He was bribed by Egypt. Like, we know Egypt does this. I mean, we could add this to the circumstantial list. Egypt likes to bribe people. Okay, to end this, I just want to make it crystal clear, like crystal clear, that I am not saying that Donald Trump or anyone in his campaign should be convicted or found guilty for a crime in this case. It is so tempting to connect all the dots here and just say like, well, yeah, clearly he did something wrong. It all adds up. But we just can't. That is not how justice works. Trump must be presumed innocent until there's sufficient evidence to prove otherwise. But to me, there's still something condemnable here, which is that a group of political appointees were able to shut down an investigation that career prosecutors said should not be shut down because there were further investigatory steps to take, rational, reasonable steps that they would have taken on any other case. But in this case, they couldn't. That's the travesty here. To me, that's not justice. That's politics. So with that, I want to leave you with a strong recommendation to read the full investigation from the Washington Post. There's more detail in there that sheds light on how this went down. And I'm grateful for the reporters who spent the months and months uncovering this because it brings it to light. Maybe if we see this and understand it and talk about it, it'll be less likely to happen again. Thanks for watching, folks. See you in the next one.
He's a fantastic guy. Took control of Egypt and got along. There was a good chemistry there. You know when you have good chemistry with people, you're the king of that. And there was a very good chemistry, good feeling between us. And I really enjoyed that meeting. It was the other day. He's done a very good job, and we had a very respectful meeting.
Whoa.
Now you do know what they say. They say if you ain't trying to cheat, you ain't trying to win.
I mean, damn. I mean, hey. Like I said, there is no proof, but I just think that I would want to know. Like, even if I was like, okay, give me the bank statements, let me look and see and then we can see how we move forward. It just seems really crazy, though, that the time frame that it took for Biden to come in to office, that the statute of limitations had kicked in, almost like that would be so strategic for something like that to go down. Fight them off as long as we could possibly fight them off to prohibit us from having to produce bank statements in Egypt. Man, this is a crazy story.
I'm finna come at it at a different angle. Like I said, if there was no proof, we ain't got no proof. We looked at the bank statements. I'm sure they looked. I'm sure they pried. I'm sure they flipped pages. I'm sure they looked, double checked, triple checked. They didn't see nothing. Hey, if you don't see anything, then hey, you must have quit.
But they only looked up until November, not until 5 days before he got elected is when that money would have come through. So really, December probably would have been okay if they would have been give us December too. But January would have showed it, or in those December statements even. I mean, I'm just saying.
I just feel like
we all know how banks work,
right? But I just feel like that would be too easy. That'll just be too easy for you just to see the money that way.
But
like, it would have to be some if it was any truth to it, it would have to be some other covert way that you would have done it to cover your tracks. Because I mean, everybody knows that there's a paper trail, especially when it comes to money, transactions, stuff like that.
Right.
So, like I said, I just feel like that would just be too easy. Like it's almost like trying to set myself up at some point in time. That's why I'm just like, that would be too easy for you to pass the money along that way through the bank, transactions, and things of that nature.
I would think that the IRS would have gotten involved.
Yeah, because anything over $10,000.
That's what I'm saying. And the fact that it was 9,998,000, like that's such an odd number. Like, why that? I'm just curious to know if it was to the penny. Like, if it would have been like 9,998,017 like, okay, maybe, but. But I just think that's such an odd number. I almost feel like once we get to 10 million, then it won't raise any red flags. Like, what did Jonah say in Ozarks with the money? If you transfer so much of it, then it don't produce the red flag or something like that.
Yeah, you don't get the red flag.
I just want to know what that number was because I'm curious. That's a really odd number if that's the number.
Yeah.
Exactly. But to say that I'm just curious to know why they didn't go any further to get any more bank statements. I feel like if you really want to put this to rest and shut everything down, then show us. Like, that's it. Like, and then you would have been like, okay, all right, well, that's it. We'll stop now because now we know. Like,
yeah, but to some degree, I just feel like it didn't. There wasn't enough for it to get legs for somebody to really start chasing to try to figure out what's going on.
$10 million for a campaign?
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. I just, I don't really know the logistics of like campaigning and how, like you said, they verify all the money, the donations, everything that goes into a campaign. But
yeah,
like you said, I just think for this person, this type of a person, the way that they described him when Obama shut all of that down, that somebody would just be willingly able and ready to call this person such a nice guy. We had such a wonderful conversation, and you over there doing some bullshit.
Well, I mean, he done said a lot of things about Putin too, so.
So I'm just like, I don't know. Something ain't right. I'm just saying, I don't know what, but it does seem odd. And then for them not to have any paper trail, I promise you, like being in the banking industry, from what I know, like there's no way. There's absolutely no way. Hell, if somebody's coming to get $1 million, I feel like they gonna have people all over the place looking through every camera in the building, like from a block down away. When you get ready to come pick it up, they gonna be ready to watch you walk in and watch you walk out, where you came from, where you going. Like,
that's why I feel like that would just be too easy. It would be too easy. Like, it would have to be a different way, a different covert way to try to hide the money. Because, I mean, obviously, every time somebody runs for office, whenever there's campaigns, we already know that there's bribes. People get bribed. We saw the whole thing with in New York with the mayor. Yeah. Like, we see that all the time. So I just feel like that would just be too easy for you just to put the money in a bank account and then, like, it's always a paper trail. I feel like that would be the easiest way to find out that there was some type of wrongdoing.
But that's what I'm saying. So to shut all of that down, to keep everybody quiet and make them go away, show them what they asking for, because only that date, like, it would only make sense if you, even if it was up to like that date, show us up to that date, the day you became the president, what these paper trails were for your bank account. And
y'all gonna have to come with an affidavit. I ain't showing nothing until I get an affidavit.
Well, that's what I'm saying. Other than that, I'm like, okay, well, if you want to shut it down, I'm like, look here, there it is. Now leave me alone, because it's not there. And then everybody will be like, oh, okay, well, it wasn't there. My bad. Like,
because even with it, like the whole thing with the tax returns and all these different types of things, just going back to like the bank statements and things of that nature, I'm like, hey, you're gonna have to do a whole lot to get my personal records. That's all I'm saying.
Yeah, well,
you're gonna need more probable cause than that.
We will never know.
Yeah, we
will never know.
It does seem a little weird, like I said, with Obama shutting down Egypt.
Yeah,
because of some of the things that they've done, like some of the moral things that they've done, and then for Donald Trump, when he gets in office, for him just to open it up and open up the budget and then give them $1.7 billion. But I see things like this happen all the time when power changes hands.
Right, of course. But at the end of the day, like you said, he couldn't prove it. And that's exactly what I said. There wasn't any way to prove it. I just feel like there was a way to shut it down, like to keep everybody from talking about it any further, but they didn't get that far. So.
You fooled me once. I ain't gonna let you fool me twice.
At the end of the day, he showed what he showed, and I'm just like,
you fool me once, you fool me twice. You ain't gonna fool me again.
Right. All right. Well, y'all chime in. Let us know what y'all think about this down in the comment section. I'm just curious to know what other people think about this. And did y'all know? Because I didn't know. I didn't hear anything about this.
Yeah, I've never heard of it. I've never heard that this ever came up.
Yeah. So if y'all enjoyed this, give us a big thumbs up, like, comment, subscribe, smash the notification bell so you don't miss any videos from Asia and BJ. And if ain't nobody else told you today, I love you. We're going to see y'all in the next video. Y'all.
Absolutely.
Yeah.